Did you know that scientists are working to create factories in space to manufacture high-tech materials that power the devices we use every day? Stay tuned for more. Hey everyone, and welcome to XSTEM All Access. My name's Maynard, and I'm excited to be part of this series, showcasing some of the coolest minds in STEM. As your guest host for this episode, I'm excited to chat with Dr. Jessica Frick. Jessica is a microgravity chemist, materials scientist, and the CEO and co-founder of Astral Materials, a company that is partnering with NASA to pioneer the manufacturing of semiconductors in space. Jessica, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Maynard. I'm happy to be here.
I am so excited to learn more about your cutting-edge work, so let's jump right in. Jessica, I'm curious, how is making semiconductor materials in space different from how they are currently made right here on Earth?
Semiconductor devices are the foundation of modern technology, powering everything from healthcare monitoring to global telecommunications. But to make a semiconductor device, you must first grow a semiconductor crystal. The Czochralski technique is the basis for most semiconductor crystal growth done on Earth today. That's what's called a melt growth technique, which just means the crystal is slowly cooled and solidified from its liquid state. To do this, polycrystalline material, which can range in consistency from sand-like powder to marble-sized chunks, is loaded into a large container called a crucible. The crucible is then heated above the melting point of the semiconductor material. For silicon, this is around 1425 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than lava, which only gets up to about 1200 degrees Celsius. But when the material is all melted, a small seed crystal, about the size of a pencil eraser, is dipped into molten material and slowly pulled up and out of the crucible. The molten material sticks to the seed crystal and begins to cool and solidify into one long single crystal called a crystal boule. Gravity is actually a subsystem of Earth crystal growth, which means it requires gravity to work. So let's take, for example, two everyday items, a drinking glass and keys. The drinking glass is designed in a way where it can only work in its intended purpose under Earth's gravity. Without gravity, water in the drinking glass will just float away, and therefore gravity is a subsystem in a drinking glass design. Unlocking a door with keys, on the other hand, can work with or without gravity. Unlike semiconductor crystals that are made on Earth, semiconductors made in space use microgravity as a hardware subsystem, which means the process is invented for operation in space.
Wow, I bet most of us don't realize that gravity plays a role in how everyday objects like our drinking glasses or flasks are designed. So the technology that we all rely on, from smartphones to computers and cars to life-saving medical devices and global telecommunications, all require these crystals to function. Can you go into a little bit more detail about why the microgravity environment of space is such a good place to make these semiconductor crystals?
Space has a unique environment that offers lots of advantages for manufacturing. But for semiconductors, the microgravity environment, or the lack of gravity, is particularly important. On Earth, gravity causes physical phenomena like hydrostatic pressure, sedimentation and flotation, thermal convection, and container interactions. Another way to say those things is heavy things apply pressure, heavy things sink, light things float, hot air rises, cold air sinks, and liquids touch containers. Now, while these phenomena are good for everyday life on Earth, they are bad for crystal growth and can cause defects at the atomic, micro, and macro scale of the crystal. So space is a great place to make semiconductors because there's no gravity, which means no detrimental physical phenomena, which means better semiconductors.
Okay, if you're like me, you might be wondering what better semiconductors actually means for us. Don't worry, we're going to dive into that soon. But first, the idea of high-tech factories in space really sparks the imagination. Can you paint a picture for us of what a semiconductor space facility might look like? Also, since space is so vast, where exactly would they be located?
To answer this question, let's briefly review what a factory looks like on Earth. A typical factory is full of machinery operated by workers that take raw material and transform it into product to be used by other industries. For example, a textile factory takes raw fiber material and turns it into yarn. In addition to the machinery and workers who transform the raw material into product, this factory system also depends on supporting infrastructure to make it happen. Raw material must be transported to the factory via trucks or ships. The machinery and workers need a building to provide supporting utilities like water for cooling and electricity for power. And then transportation is needed again to distribute the product to warehouses for storage or to other companies along the supply chain. Factories in space will operate just like factories on Earth, but the components of the industrial park will look a little different. For example, instead of trucks and ships, transport of raw materials and product will be done using rockets and space planes. And instead of a building to provide utilities for manufacturing, it'll be a space station. Regarding the location of these factories, the most important aspect is proximity to where the semiconductor product will be used. In the near term, which we define as 5 to 10 years, these factories will produce semiconductors to be used on Earth, so the space factories won't be too far away. Low Earth orbit, or LEO, is where these first space factories will be, which is the orbit around Earth where the International Space Station flies. It's actually quite close to Earth. For example, if Earth were the size of a standard globe, LEO is only about 1 centimeter off the surface, as opposed to the Moon, which in relative terms would be located 30 feet away from the globe.
My imagination is running wild with the idea of space factories floating in low Earth orbit with rockets and space planes transporting materials to and from. It's absolutely crazy. And the idea that this could be a reality in just 5 to 10 years is also mind-blowing. But I'm curious, will these facilities have humans working on them, or will they be run by robotic or autonomous systems?
There are many kinds of research and manufacturing that will require some human presence. A great example are the many biological experiments carried out by astronauts on the International Space Station. No matter how much we manufacture, space will always be a great place for fundamental sciences. There are also going to be issues that can only be solved by humans. If a part of a station is damaged, for example, we won't always have a robot that can make the necessary repairs. However, for stations or platforms that focus on manufacturing, we can rely heavily on automation. The more routine we can make in-space manufacturing, the more efficient we can make uncrewed platforms. Additionally, advanced material manufacturing often involves hazardous components and uses very high operating temperatures. So for safety reasons, it's best to have as little human interaction as possible.
Whether you're working in a facility located in space or supporting the work of a space-based facility from here on Earth, how amazing to be part of this giant leap in science and innovation. Jessica, once semiconductor materials are produced in space, what happens next? How will they make it back to Earth, and how are they turned into the advanced technologies we use every day?
The space environment helps us make better materials, but we want to use them on Earth. We already have the technology to bring people and science back to Earth from space. For example, the SpaceX Dragon capsule is used today to downmass R&D products from the ISS. There are also a ton of new downmass capabilities being developed by private companies today, including space planes, re-entry capsules, and space drones. Now, once the semiconductor crystal is returned to Earth, we can process that material with standard slicing and polishing techniques into wafer products. These wafers are then sold to device manufacturers, who make better products with their higher quality crystals. So while we're doing the crystal growth in space, the downstream supply chains remain the same.
Jessica, we've talked about the benefits of microgravity for making higher quality crystals, but what improvements could these better space-made crystals bring to the devices we rely on? How might manufacturing them in space possibly change the future of technology?
Essentially, the performance of a semiconductor device is only as good as the quality of its components. It's a bit like cooking. Higher quality, fresher ingredients give you the best meal. So, if a device is made from our space-grown semiconductor material, you can expect a device that has improved product lifetime, a device that is more compact and energy efficient, a device that has wider operating ranges, or a device that has higher breakdown voltages. And these gains at the device level translate to systems that then require less servicing, systems that have smaller, less invasive sensors, systems that are environmentally versatile, and systems that can charge faster. Ultimately, better semiconductor materials equals better system performance.
Semiconductors are at the heart of everything we rely on, and I'm not just talking about our smartphones. Advanced defense systems, life-saving medical equipment, and even the power grid are all powered by semiconductors. Improving their performance isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a big deal for our health and our safety. So, Jessica, what kinds of careers will be needed to support space manufacturing, and what might the future workforce look like? How can students today start preparing for jobs in this field that's still being invented?
Space is just a place. We will need all kinds of jobs to support a growing industry. As in-space manufacturing becomes more commonplace, there will be more jobs for engineers, technicians, and other skilled workers who make up other common fields. Because while the hardware going to space is exciting, most of the work to make it happen takes place back on Earth. In terms of roles more specific to this industry, it's important that students stay curious. We've barely scratched the surface of doing science and engineering in space, and there's still a lot of room to be clever. I'm sure that many of the processes that will be commonplace in in-space manufacturing 30 years from now have yet to be invented. If students want to prepare for a career in this field, the most important thing that they can do is build things, solve problems that excite them, and keep up to date with all the exciting things happening in space.
Space is just a place. I love that. And yes, it is so important to stay curious. I couldn't agree more. Jessica, before we sign off, how soon do you think we'll start seeing space-made materials and everyday products that we buy right here on Earth?
It'll still be quite a while before space-grown materials are in everyday products. While space has some great advantages, it's still expensive compared to Earth-based processes. Use cases for space-made materials are for complex, very sensitive applications, for advanced computing sectors and defense needs. However, as history has shown us, materials-enabled technology might start niche or boutique, but once the advantages are evident in practice, a ramp-up in production to public availability is inevitable. For example, silicon-based electronics in the 80s could only be afforded by the largest corporations and defense agencies. But today, almost every person you know carries around silicon crystals in their pockets, aka a smartphone. Based on the trajectory of investment in off-Earth infrastructure and manufacturing, it's only a few short decades until space-made semiconductors work their way into your hand.
How exciting that someday we'll all be carrying around space-made semiconductors in our devices. That's so wild. Jessica, you are truly at the forefront of a new and exciting frontier using microgravity as a manufacturing tool that will help define the future of technology and humanity. So I want to thank you so much for chatting with me today about your work that is set to revolutionize microelectronics on Earth and, of course, beyond.
Thank you, Maynard. It was great to be here, and thank you to the students for watching.
Students, I encourage you to check out the career resource page to further explore related fields like materials science, microelectronics, advanced manufacturing, and more, and the many career applications they all have to offer. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel in the description below and follow us on social media to get updates about new episodes. Trust me, you don't want to miss any of them. Plus, you'll get access to fun weekly content for students and teachers. And don't forget to check out the full library of episodes available on demand right here. Each one has a standards-aligned lesson plan for teachers to use in the classroom, and each lesson also includes a career connection component so students can explore real-world careers associated with the topic. I had such a blast being your host today. Keep up with me and my own crazy STEM adventures here. I'll catch you next time for more XSTEM All Access episodes where we'll meet more of the coolest minds in STEM. Peace.